Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to buy.
Hi, I'm Ollie at Techable, and today I want to talk about the iPhone 14. Well, kind of. It's a weird one really. I don't necessarily want to talk about the iPhone 14 and the rumours and the features, but almost the lack of rumours and features surrounding this device. I mean, I just find it kind of fascinating. So next week on the 7th of September, we're going to see the Apple Autumn event where we expect the iPhone 14 to be the headline reveal. And so far, the headline features that I can tell, there's talk of maybe emergency satellite calling, there's talk of a slightly bigger battery, an always-on display, and, of course, the big one, the removal of the notch. And I've got to admit, this whole notch conversation is kind of driving me crazy. I mean, I've seen a lot of really established websites and kind of big name YouTubers producing multiple pieces of content talking about the notch. You know, call me crazy here, but the notch really isn't, by this point, a massive feature of a device. I mean, it's barely even a talking point, and yet Apple have made it a talking point. So if I take here my iPhone 12, right? And the only way you can really tell that's an iPhone 12 is because the notch is slightly bigger than the iPhone 13, or also the camera setting, which is horizontal opposed to the iPhone 13, which is diagonal. But what I find just absolutely mad about that is they create conversations about things which don't really need to be a conversation. And just to illustrate that point, here I have a Samsung A50. This is a budget Samsung phone from 2018. I mean, it cost me whatever it was, maybe £200 at the time, probably about $300. And it's a budget phone, right? It's plasticky, it's not made to be premium, but you have a look at the notch on the front. I mean, that's all the notch that a budget phone needed in 2018, that's 4 years ago. And okay, it doesn't have all of the bells and whistles of an iPhone 12, but they just removed it. You know, more screen real estate is good, and that's how phone makers kind of have been thinking for some time. But Apple say, no, you need the notch. The notch is important. And they tell you, and people listen, and all of a sudden there's a conversation about the notch. Kind of mad to me. And this is why Apple's product strategy is starting to get to me a little bit. I mean, I just feel like every single year Apple are releasing new things because there's that yearly cycle. They've got to release new things. And yet less and less innovation is coming, and more kind of small, arbitrary mishmash of tweaks that, okay, they remove some good stuff and they add some good stuff, or they remove a few bad things and add a few good things. But it's so tiny. I mean, and we're not talking about new ingenious changes that no one could have possibly seen in leading the industry. We're talking about things like the notch, which everyone else got rid of 4 years ago, and Apple are only starting to do now for some reason. And I looked at another example of that in my M2 MacBook Air video. Yeah, okay, they added a lot of very small, very neat things, which is going to be great in the M2 MacBook Air for people who want it. But at the same time, they increased the price substantially for a lot of people, as well as putting in a slower SSD into the base model, which makes the base model, well, much less beneficial from a purely efficiency perspective than getting the old generation M1 MacBook Air. I mean, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. There was no reason to do that from a tech perspective. That was entirely a product decision. It was a decision made to get people to buy one device over another. And these kind of practices, it reminds me of like EA sports games, like FIFA, for example, where it feels like EA are always taking away features that people like and then reintroducing them a few years later as brand new and innovative, and this is why you want to buy this new game. It's more like expectation management than innovation. You're not adding new things, you're not creating a new experience, you're not saying, look at this great brand new product. All you're kind of doing is chopping and changing the technology you know you have and trying to meet those consumer expectations so that you can sell them the new shiny thing when you want to try and push that new shiny thing. And another example similar to the notch is USB-C. Now, this isn't news, I'm not saying anything new, and indeed, it's currently a court case going through the European courts right now to try and force Apple to adopt USB-C. But why haven't they? Like, at a really fundamental level, why haven't they? USB-C is universal, pretty much all Android devices use it. I mean, Apple have USB-C on other Apple devices. So it's kind of crazy that they're still using this proprietary lightning cable for their most popular product. And you know, when they add USB-C, they're going to sell it as a new feature. They're going to be like, well, we have deemed ourselves, Apple, to bestow upon you universal charging ports, as if it's kind of crazy revolutionary idea. And it just drives me mad about Apple. I mean, everyone else is doing it. Apple used to be a company that did things before everyone else. They're now doing things 4 or 5 years after. And I mean, it's kind of obvious why they're hanging on to
Lightning port.
Ultimately, the more proprietary stuff from Apple you use, the more proprietary stuff from Apple you have to buy. Oh, you need lightning cables? Well, you're going to have to buy your lightning cables from Apple. Do those need to have special adapters like lightning to USB-C? Well, you're going to have to buy those from Apple as well. And potentially you're going to have to buy accessories, dongles, whatever it might be. They want to keep you in that ecosystem. And yeah, this anti-consumer practice just kind of drives me mad. It's very similar to the right to repair stuff, which Apple really don't want to get on board with. It's just a lot of different ways Apple are saying, well, we could give you all this stuff you want, but we're not going to. And I'm starting to feel like Apple kind of treat this lack of consumer care as a product feature in of itself. It's allowing people to buy into the Apple ecosystem and almost allowing people to buy into the Apple elitism that comes in with that, flashing the cash by showing off their latest proprietary Apple accessories. It's just like those fancy restaurants where you go in and you get a tiny little plate of food and the waiter's really rude to you and then they charge you an absolute fortune, but you almost feel like you have to like it, like you have to go along with the masquerade of thinking that this is the highest level of food that you can possibly enjoy. It's some kind of weird confidence trick. And yeah, I just kind of find these practices mad. I mean, here, this is a Realme 8 5G. So this is a budget phone from Realme, came out in 2021, and it cost me about £125. I think it's a bit more expensive in the US, but really this could be a proxy for any recent Chinese-based budget phone. They're all kind of offering the same kind of features. And in the case of the Realme, this is a phone that has a 90Hz screen, a basically 2-day battery life, fingerprint scanning and facial recognition, and well, yeah, USB-C fast charging. And this is a phone that costs £125. I mean, sure, the camera, the build quality, the processor, they're pretty middling, but it's an extremely functional phone for a budget price. And this is what I like to see in technology. I mean, the R&D work for high refresh screens, for example, has already been done. You know, there doesn't need to be a huge margin put on that anymore. That work has kind of paid itself off. Companies and manufacturers can make hundreds and thousands of these screens at a relatively low price now. So why not put these screens in pretty much every phone out there? There's not a technical drawback to doing that. So basically you're able to pass all of the benefits through having trial and error and generations of phones trying to work out what works and what doesn't, and now you're able to provide higher specs and generally higher quality of life items to more people, passing those benefits onto the consumer. And who knows, if you get really good at these manufacturing processes, maybe you could make them a little bit more friendly to the planet. That would be great as well, but
I must be dreaming.
And this is kind of the opposite to what Apple do. You know, in the Android area where things are pretty fiercely competitive, every brand is always trying to add things, make things cheaper, make things a little bit better for more people. But Apple don't do that because Apple don't fight this battle on a tech level. They fight this battle on a product level. Apple aren't really a tech company at heart. They're a product company. And what really bothers me is the iPhone 14 is just going to be another one of those products coming off the production line, pitched with just the right amount of changes, even silly ones like the notch, and at just the right price to get the maximum amount of money off the maximum amount of people. And the question for me is, how much longer can Apple do this before people start to get wise? Now, I'm not expecting that all of a sudden this strategy is going to completely stop working for Apple, but with the global economic downturn starting to really squeeze consumers' pockets, there is a question of just how much longer everyone's going to just accept having to pay these premiums for not a huge amount of real innovation. When I set out to do this video, I was going to ask the question, has Apple peaked? But in reality, it's not so much a peak, it's more of a plateau. For the last 3 to 4 years, Apple have kind of been on rails, just producing very small incremental improvements to their product lines. And whilst M1 may be a small delineation from this, they kind of went straight back to that railed approach with the M2, which was the same technology, albeit a little bit better. You've got to remember, Apple's meteoric rise over the last 10 to 15 years has generally taken place in a time where the economy has been booming and all of those lines are going in a generally upward direction, with more consumers having more money in their pockets. That's a perfect environment for selling premium products. And if Apple want to sustain that growth, they might have to change their strategy a little bit for people who aren't going to be flush with cash and to deal with a new economic and consumer-led environment. Only time will tell, and who knows, Apple could massively surprise us at the iPhone launch event next week, but somehow I doubt it. Though, if it does, I'll be happy to eat my words, and also happy to see some genuine innovation from Apple. But that's enough of a rant from me. I've been Ollie at Techable, and if you like this video, please give us a like, it really helps, and take a look at some of the other videos we've got on the channel, as well as subscribe, because I've got some fantastic stuff coming up, particularly a look at the Framework laptop, which I should be getting within the next week or so. So yeah, subscribe for that. I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.